Erica was right about going to the Quack Shack being the local first stop. Claire got her ankle wrapped, an ice pack, and some frowns over the forming bruises. Nothing broken, but she was going to be black and blue for days. The doctor asked some pro forma questions about boyfriends and stuff. But since she could truthfully say that no, her boyfriend hadn't been beating her up, he just shrugged and told her to watch her step. He wrote her an excuse note, and gave her some painkillers and told her to go home. No way was she going back to the dorm. Truth was she didn't have much in the room. Some books, a few photos of home, some posters. She hadn't even had a chance to call it home, and for whatever reason, she never really felt safe there. It had always felt like a warehouse for kids who were one way or another going to leave. She limped over to the quad, which was a big empty concrete space with some rickety old benches and picnic tables, cornered on all sides by squat, unappealing buildings that mostly just looked like boxes with windows. Architecture student projects, probably. She heard a rumor that one of them had fallen down a few years back, but then she'd also heard rumors about a janitor getting beheaded in the chem lab, and haunting the building, and zombies roaming the grounds after dark, so she wasn't putting too much stock in it. It was mid-afternoon already, and not a lot of students were hanging around the quad. With its lack of shade, great design, considering that the weather was still hovering up in the high 90s in September. Claire picked up a campus paper from the stand, carefully took a seat on the blazing hot bench, and opened it to the housing section. Dorm rooms were out of the question. Howard Hall and Lansdale Hall were the only two that took in girls under 20. She wasn't old enough to qualify for the co-ed dorms. Stupid rules were probably written when girls wore hoop skirts. She thought and skipped the dorm listings until she got to off-campus. Not that she was really allowed to be living off-campus. Mom and Dad would have total freak-out over it, no question. But if it was between monochrome parental freakage, she'd take the latter. After all, the important thing was to get herself someplace where she felt safe, where she could study, right? She dug in her backpack, found her cell phone, and checked for coverage. It was kind of lame in Morganville, truthfully, out of in the middle of the prairie, in the middle of Texas, which was about as middle of nowhere as it was possible to get, unless you wanted to go to Mongolia or something. 2 bars, not great, but it'd do. Claire started dialing numbers. The first person told her that they'd already found somebody, and hung up before she could even say thanks. The second one sounded like a weird old guy. The third one was a weird old lady. The fourth one was just plain weird. The fifth listing downward, 3 roommates seeking fourth. Huge old house, privacy assured. Reasonable rent and utilities, she wasn't sure what she could afford reasonable. She was more looking for dirt cheap, but at least it sounded less weird than the others. 3 roommates, that meant 3 more people who'd maybe take up for her if Monica and company came sniffing around, or at least take up for the house. She called and got an answering machine with a mellow-sounding, young-sounding male voice. "Hello, you've reached the glass house. If you're looking for Michael, he sleeps days. If you're looking for Shane, good luck with that, 'cause we never know where the hell he is." Distant laugh from at least 2 people, and if you're looking for Eve, you'll probably get her on a cell phone or at the shop. But hey, leave a message, and if you're looking to audition for the room, come on by. It's 716 West Lot Street. A totally different voice, a female one, laughed up by giggles like bubbles in soda, said, "Yeah, just look for the mansion." And then a third voice, male again. "Gone with the Wind meets the Munsters." More laughter and deep. Claire blinked, coughed, and finally said, "Hi, my name is Claire Danvers, and I was, calling about the, room thing." Sorry, I hung up in a panic. Those 3 people sounded normal. But they sounded pretty close, too, and in her experience, groups of friends like that just didn't open up to include underage, undersized geeks like her. They hadn't sounded mean, they just sounded self-confident, something she wasn't. She checked the rest of the listings and felt her heart actually sink a little, maybe 1.5 inches, with a slight sideways twist. God, I'm dead. She couldn't sleep out here on a bench like some homeless loser, and she couldn't go back to the dorm. She had to do something. Fine, she thought, and snapped her phone shut, then opened to dial a cab. 716 Law Street, Gone with the Wind meets the Munsters. Right. Maybe they'd at least feel sorry enough for her to put her up for one lousy night. The cabbie, she figured, he was just about the only cab driver in Morganville. which apart from the campus at TPU on the edge of town had only about 10,000 people in it. Took an hour to show up. Claire hadn't been in her car in 6 weeks, since her parents had driven her into town. She hadn't been much beyond a block of the campus either, and then just to buy used books for class. "You meeting someone?" the cabbie asked. She was staring out the window at the storefronts, used clothing shops, used bookshops, computer stores that sold nothing but wooden Greek letters. All catering in the college. "No? Why?" The cabbie shrugged. "Usually you kids are meeting up with friends, if you're looking for a good time." She shivered. Yes, I'm meeting some people. If you could hurry, please." He grunted and took a right turn, and the cab went from College Town to Creepy Town in one block flat. She couldn't define how it happened. Exactly, the buildings were pretty much the same, but they looked dim and old, and the people who were moving on the streets had their heads down. And were walking fast, even when people were walking in 2 or 3s. They weren't chatting. When the cab passed, people looked up, then down again, as if they'd been looking for another kind of car. A little girl was walking with her hand in her mother's hand. In her mother's, and as the cab stopped for a light, the girl waved, just a little. Claire waved back. The girl's mother looked up alarmed and hustled her kid away into the black mouth of a store that sold used electronics. Wow, Claire thought. Do I look that scary? Maybe she did, or maybe Morganville was just ultra careful of its kids. Funny now that she thought about it, there was something missing in this town. Signs. She'd seen them all over her stapled to telephone poles. Them all alive, stapled to telephone poles. Advertisements for lost dogs, missing kids or adults. Nothing here, nothing. Lodge Street, the cabbie announced, and squalled to a stop. 10:50. For 5-minute ride? Claire thought, amazed, but she paid up. She thought about shooting him the finger as he drove away, but he looked kind of dangerous, and besides, she really wasn't the kind of girl who did that sort of thing. Usually it was a bad day, though. She hoisted her backpack again, hit a bruise on her shoulder, and nearly dropped the weight on her foot. Tears stung her at her eyes. All of a sudden she felt tired and shaky again. Scared. At least on campus she kind of been on relatively familiar ground. But out here in town it was like being a stranger all over again. Morganville was brown. Burnt brown by the sun, beaten down by wind and weather. Hot summer was starting to give way to hot autumn. And leaves on the trees, what trees they were, looked grey-edged and dry, and they rattled like paper in the wind. West Lodge Street was near what passed for the downtown district in town. Probably an old residential neighborhood. Nothing special about the homes that she could see. Ranch houses, most of them with peeling, faded paint. She counted house numbers and realized she was standing in front of 716. She turned and looked behind her and gasped because whoever the guy had been on the phone had been dead on right in his description. 716 looked like a movie set, something straight out of the Civil War. Big graying columns. A wide front porch. 2 stories of windows. The place was huge. Well, not huge, but bigger than Claire had imagined. Like big enough to be a frat house, and probably perfectly suited to it. She could just imagine Greek letters all over the door. It looked deserted, but to be fair, every house on the block looked deserted. A late afternoon, nobody home from work yet. A few cars glittered in the white hot sunshine. Finish softened by a layer of dirt. No cars in front of 716, though. This was such a bad idea, she thought, and there were those tears again, bubbling up along with panic. What was she going to do? Walk up to the door and beg to be a roommate? How lame-ass was that? They'd think she was pathetic at best. A head case at worst. No, it had been a dumb idea to even blow the money on cab fare. It was hot and she was tired, and she had homework due, and no place to sleep. And all of a sudden it was just too much. Claire dropped her backpack, buried her bruised face in both hands, and just started sobbing like a baby. Crybaby freak. She meant a Monica saying, but that just made her sob harder. And all of a sudden the idea of being home, going home to Mom and Dad, and the room she knew they'd kept open for her, seemed better. Better than anything out here in this scary, crazy world. "Hey!" a girl's voice said, and someone touched her on her elbow. "Hey, are you okay?" Claire yelped and jumped, landed hard on her strained ankle, and nearly toppled over. The girl who scared her reached out and grabbed her arm to steady her, looking genuinely scared herself. "I'm sorry. God, I'm such a klutz. Look, are you okay?" The girl wasn't Monica, or Jen, or Gina, or anybody else she'd seen around campus or TPU. This girl was way goth. Not in a bad way. She didn't have the sulky, "I'm so not cool, I'm cool" attitude of most of the goths Claire had known in school, but the dyed black, shy-cut hair, the pale makeup and the heavy eyeliner and mascara, the red and black striped tights and clunky black shoes and black pleated miniskirts. Very definitely fan of the dark side.